Okay, so it is 5:31. I call this meeting officially to order. There's my schema. Okay, so sorry about that. On to the agenda. Can I entertain a motion to approve?
Just as a reminder, we have a roll call in attendance first. And I know
yes.
Eunice is going to be late or not able to attend. He let us know ahead of time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but given the rest, you may want to just go through, Christian, since we have multiple guests, and just do from the minutes just the roll call based on name. I think most others are here from what I'm trying to quickly scan, though.
So just do a quick roll call then?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. I see Aubrey. I see Dr. Jennifer. I see Dean Gregg, Brandon, Deanna McHale's there, Ashley Sue, Landis Hansen.
And Christian, we would just want to do the roll call just for the committee members. So you would want to check off of and you can look at the minutes from last week to see who are the committee members.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. There's Terry, Bjorn, Josh, Zoe, Lacey. Do we know who Mac 97639 is? We don't know. Okay. In that case, let's move on. There's Gray. And the only person that I don't see is Jess. Do you know about Jess?
That's who I was missing too, as I was quickly trying to scan. Besides Eunice, who again may show up later, may not be here. I don't see Jess on there. Oh, and Jess just signed in. So Jess is here now.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, and okay. All right. And so now we go to the agenda approval, right? Okay. Can I entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, motion by Bjorn. Seconded by Brandon. And we're about to vote. And just so everyone who's not a committee member, just don't do it, please. That would mess it up a little bit.
Thank you, Christian.
All right, motion approved. On to the approval of last meeting's minutes. Can I entertain a motion to approve?
Fine, so moved.
Second. Thank you, Bjorn.
There was a second, but I didn't catch who said that. Deanna seconds.
All right, motion approved. On to reports. I don't have anything to report to you guys today, so I will henceforth go to Brandon.
We don't have a whole lot to report either. Just one announcement for everyone here, maybe just to share. Wildcat Care 365 is now live. That is a 24/7, 365 days a year healthcare service that is through Timely MD and Central. So if you ever want to check it out, the service, www.wildcare365.com. And then other than that, I just want you to know that myself, I guess just kind of like ASCWU, as well as your advisors, are always here for you as board members. If you have any questions, especially going into the rest of this quarter where we're hearing more and more requests and presentations, and spring quarter when we start, talking and discussing and figuring out what decisions we want to make with our student money.
Thank you, Brandon. All right. Do our advisors have anything to report on today?
Yes, I wanted to kind of ask the committee if they'd had a chance to look at the Power BI information that we put in Teams for the committee members. Not yet. Okay. So I'm going to kind of share my screen here in a second. So this is definitely available to you all at any time. And really, I'll just kind of walk through the tabs briefly just to let you know if you want to go back and look at this information. But today we're going to be focusing on the presenters that are happening just in today's meeting. And that is going to be a handful of different programs under ASCWU. But as you can see, to kind of refresh our memory, this running totals tab actually has all of our requests that we will see through this quarter. And you can kind of keep scrolling down, and it's a little hard to see this. There we go. And so as of right now, we have a total of 8.3 million requested for fiscal 22's new funding cycle, which is $1 million more than what we are currently allocated. So this column right here is the requests, and the fiscal 21 column is what they have been previously funded. So if you scroll up, you'll see that we do have some new requests, and that's why there is zero data in those columns. But to kind of go back and focus on the ASCW presentations for tonight, you will see that we have 6 years of financial data, and the fiscal 17 data is from the previous funding cycle. And then you'll see the last 4 funding cycles that we've had, and then their request next to it. And I'm sure this will come up in their presentation, but just as an overview, this is going to be the last time that we as a committee have a grouping like this that are all in one area. And so it's going to be kind of unique to be able to view it this way. As you can see, they did have an increase in their funding cycle last year, but they're actually matching their requests from fiscal 21 onto fiscal 22. So what that means is that ASCW across the board is not requesting an increase from their current allocation. The graph below actually just is the same information as this up here, but it just is in a graphic visual. Does anybody have any questions about this information or any of these presentations before we go ahead and start with those?
Lacey, is this, and I apologize because we were helping sort through this last week, this is in Microsoft Teams for the committee. When they go into it, do they need to do the trial membership thing still to be able to access it?
Yes. So if you don't have a membership already, which most of our students probably fit into that category, I would say go ahead and sign up for the free subscription. It does last for 60 days. I have a few questions out there to see if we can get that extended. I haven't heard back from IT yet, but hopefully soon we'll get some word on that. But if not, I do have full access, and so I can report this and share my screen. But I think it is useful if you do want to sign up for that, so that way if you want to reference this on your own. And it shouldn't matter, but I should mention that all of this is going to be through your CW email. So make sure that you're signed in through your CW email. And I think the teams already make sure that happens. But I did want to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, just so I can show you where it's at in Teams. So just 1 second. So if we actually, I'm going to go back just so I can show everybody how to get there. Oh gosh, I have to move this a little bit. So if you actually go just to, oh, gotta love sharing your screen here. It's all hiding here. If you go back into the Teams committee folder for this year, it's actually right at the top. So there is a link in here and you should be able to click through this, but sometimes it's easier if you just go right up to the top. And if you don't have an access, it'll kind of pop up a window here and you quickly log in, and then you can actually go ahead and view this information. And so this will be continually updated throughout throughout this quarter, but I will always be sharing information out of this document through each week too.
And so, yeah, for the committee, definitely utilize that as you're looking at things, either planning for the week as we go into it, but just as you're going through your notes and looking at data and things, if you want to prep for questions ahead of time. Lacey did a great job pulling together all that information and making it so you all can access it as well. So
And one piece of, oh,
sorry.
yes.
I just was following through, and when I click that tab, S&A base funding at the top, it's blank.
are you clicking the Power BI tab at the top of that, Greg?
I did the other way, but if I click the Power BI, I think it was the same thing.
If you click the link, it was popping up blank. I would try and click, I think they're called pages, but they're going to be at the top of the Teams group. It might take a little bit to load.
It does. It's a lot of data for the Power BI, depending on your connection.
And one thing is I can PDF some of this information, and we can still view it that way. It's not necessarily as user-friendly in my mind. And so, at least for my opinion, but if we want to, feel free to message me and I can at least send you a PDF of any type of information that you're looking at. One thing I wanted just to reiterate, just in case anybody missed last week's meeting, is Josh asked a really good question about what data we're looking at in here. And so the data that we're looking at is just the allocation. It's not the expenses per department or program. You're going to really find that information in the annual report documentation. And actually, Aubrey sends it out in a whole package each week. And so if you want to look at expenses or anything for a specific program, that's a really good way. And it's towards the bottom of the packet. And that's where you'll see those annual reports where we have reviewed in the past, and it'll have all 4 years of the fiscal funding, and it'll show the allocation and the expenses and what types of expenses that each program has.
The only pieces I have to add for advisor report is two. One is, again, as you're prepping and planning, I know there's a lot of information that's getting presented as we do these base funding requests. And we as a committee have a limited window to ask questions, again, similar to their presentations. However, if you all think of questions for any of the presenters afterwards, I'd ask that you please go ahead and direct those to Aubrey, Lacey, or myself, because what we'll do is we can ask those questions. However, we want it to be through the official channels because we need to report those answers back to the full committee as an open public meeting. So not that anyone has, but don't necessarily just reach out directly to the presenters because we need to make sure that information gets shared officially with the committee with any questions. But beyond that, I know last week was our first week of the base funding. We had some of our operational pieces and some of the ones that are a little bit unique, again, with the admin fee and the bond payment and those. But before we jump into the others, were there questions from the committee for us, the advisors, or for any other returning members, just about the presentations, questions that you all have or should be asking or anything along those lines? Awesome. If you do think of any, feel free to ask either at the meeting, or you can reach out to Lacey, Aubrey, or myself, or Brandon and Christian outside of the meeting too. We can help answer any of those. And we can test and troubleshoot the Teams pages. I know Aubrey, Lacey, and myself all tested and got it to work on those things, but we can do some test stuff, or we can PDF if there's specific things. I see Terry's comment in there. And thank you, Bjorn. Go ahead, Christian.
Anything else? All right. So moving on to public comments. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will ask that we go to new business, and that is our presentations today. The first one that I see on the record is the Board of Directors. So I give you your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christian. So before I actually share my screen, I did want to note that we are lumping together all 6 S&A requests into 2 presentations. So I don't know if y'all needed to make a motion to allot more time or what that looks like internally.
So yes, Mikkel, if we're going to do that, so you said you're going to have them in 2 presentations?
Yeah,
Is that-
I'll touch
okay.
on the first 5, and then Jacob will go in depth with the Equity and Service Council request.
Okay. Well, and I guess I'd ask the question before I have the committee vote. With that, depending on the time frame, my guess is with the 5 that you're going to do, it's going to go over the 10 minutes. However, it depends on how long. Like if you're going to take 50 minutes, I'd probably say you do a part, then we do the questions, and you do a part. If it's going to be 15, 20 minutes, then yeah, what we can do is have the committee just vote to combine them and have it be the longer one for equity's sake for the other groups coming in. And then similar, we would have the same amount of time for questions afterwards. So however you would like to request on the time frame of that. Do you think it'll probably be a 20, 30 minute presentation for the first 5?
Yeah, 20. Yeah, that's a good guess.
Okay. So I would have Christian to probably entertain a motion just to have, and ESC is the separate one. Is that correct, Mikkel?
Yes.
Is that we would combine the other base funding presentations into a 30-minute time limit, and I can give the heads up when we get within time, Mikkel, in the comments, and then we'll have questions for that, and then others afterwards.
Okay, and Mikhail, you said about 30 minutes for the time limit, or?
Yeah.
That's okay. I would like to entertain a motion to give Mikhail 30 minutes for this first presentation.
And it's combining 5 of the base funding.
Combining 5, yes.
So moved.
All right. Motion by Bjorn. Do I see a second?
Seconded.
I think Eunice had his hand up.
Eunice and Messina.
Messina can go.
All right, sounds good. All right, motion approved. A motion passed, I should say. All right, Mikhail, I give you the floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christian. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Mikhail Candelaria. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the current student body president of Central Washington University. So I'll be presenting on behalf of ASCWU student government. And then I also want Jacob to go ahead and introduce himself really quick. Maybe. That's okay. Okay. Yeah, we can hear you, Jacob.
Okay, sorry. Hello, everyone. Jacob Robles, pronouns he, him, his, and I'm the Director of Equity and Multicultural Affairs.
All right. So before I really dive in, I also wanted to give a quick shout out and thank you to Abby and Dr. Hyatt, who have largely supported Jacob and I in this process. It's definitely been wild. So thank you both so much for your support. So this slide just kind of goes over our kind of roadmap for our conversation tonight. And I'm calling it a conversation because this is such a great group and a comfortable group for me to speak to and be in front of. So I'll go over some of the highlights and overviews and then go individually over the first 5 budgets, talk about the metrics, S&A funding, and what we would do if we were to reduce it by 15% as outlined by the rubric. And then I'll allow questions at any point. Feel free to pause me, and then I'll turn it over to Jacob to go ahead and talk about ESC a little bit more in depth. So for the Killian outline, I did just want to, I know it's a little hard to see, but the highlighted portions just go over the parts in the Killian outline where it talks about student governance. And that's really us as ASCWU. ASCWU student government serves as the student governing board for CWU. And so we just kind of outlined all the parts in the Killian outline where that is relevant to S&A and ASCWU. So as everybody has stated tonight, we will be talking about 6 separate S&A base funding requests for the next quadrennium, but we're kind of lumping it together in 2 separate presentations. I'll go over the first 5, which is the BOD, Student Life and Facilities, Club Senate, Student Academic Senate, and Legislative Affairs. And then Jacob will touch a little bit more closely on the Equity and Service Council base funding. So this slide is super important. Lacey did bring it up, and I'm so glad that she did. We are not requesting an increase on top of what we currently have right now for the next quadrennium. So we're hoping to stay flat at that 503 number right here. I don't know if y'all can see my mouse. That's a little awkward if you can't. But we are hoping to stay flat for the next 4 years. And the two different charts kind of show y'all the breakdown of where the 6 budgets go to, but I'll talk about it in kind of like a whole bird's eye view from a 50-foot, 1,000 level view. This pie chart on the left shows that 50% of our budget with ASCWU, so all 6 budgets, actually go back to students directly in the form of a paycheck through wages and salaries, while the 43%, which is represented in the orange, goes back to students in the form of goods and services. And that does look a little differently each year, as we do have a high turnover rate, as you all know, with each officer serving about a year, 2 years maximum on the board. And it also looks different per staff team on ASCWU, but typically it looks like goods and services in the form of a program, event, or strategic initiative that that specific officer or staff member kind of wanted to tackle on. And the way that it splits up is on the right side over here with each budget and where it's allocated for the offices. So I really wanted to touch on our mission statements for our 3 largest and main groups of student engagement within ASCWU. So we have our Board of Directors, Student Senate, and Equity and Services Council. And this is our mission statement, but in all reality, all in all, we really just serve the students. One of the questions on the rubric was how many students we serve. To be quite frank, we serve every single student at Central Washington University. Whether you are a student on the west, east side, online campus, main campus in Ellensburg, and we also largely advocate for historically marginalized communities. And you all know this firsthand because I was here last quarter presenting for a request for what's a project called the Center for Cultural Innovation. And that really, I think, highlight and encapsulates what ASCWU is here for, which is bringing voices to the table that have historically not been heard before, and championing some of the strategic initiatives and projects that have really come from the students for the students. We also appoint students onto various committees, much like this committee here, but also search committees. And search committees could range from a program manager position to the university president position. So we really advocate for students to sit and have a voice at tables that really is so rare and so amazing, and a great leadership and development opportunity as a whole. We serve marginalized communities as well, largely through ESC, which Jacob will touch on in a bit over here. So I just realized how blurry this is because I can't even read it, but I am going to for sure reach out and email y'all a PDF file of our organizational chart. So this kind of goes over our staffing specifically for this year and how we're structured. We did go through a restructure as of last year. But on a normal year, we have about 21 student staff, 6 of which are executive officers, and then the rest serve in administrative support / staff. We do not employ any professional staff. We only employ student staff for right now. And this is just ASCWU by the numbers. I feel like out of all the committees, S&A would be the numbers oriented folks on this committee. So I know that some of y'all do enjoy just looking at it from this perspective. We do have 6 S&A funded budget. We now from here on out have 6 elected officers. Historically, we have had 7, but we shifted clubs to be underneath the Office of Student Engagement. And then we have on a normal year, 10 to 18 paid additional student staff, depending on the year. We now have 23 paid student senators, which is awesome. And on a regular basis, we always have about 20 or more student programs or events that are hosted by students for students, whether that is virtual, in-person, or hybrid this year. We have 9+ Equity and Service Council organizations, potentially 10 tomorrow, pending that meeting. And we are always looking for growth with equity and student organizations. We have about 35+ committees and over 130+ clubs. So the next 2 slides, I'll touch heavily on impact. and how that relates with ASCW and S&A's help with our impact as an organization. But I really wanted to touch on the metrics question on the rubric. So we largely use presence, which was rolled out with Michael Middleton and Jeff Rosenberry from the Office of Student Involvement. So we use presence to track how many students / attendees in general have attended our events and programs. And that is how we calculate how many students we were able to get engaged with us. We also have, as of fall, implemented an internal metric to assess our student staff, just to see what their experience is like working within ASCWU. What steps can we take internally as the board of directors or myself as the current president of the Associated Students to make their employment experience with ASCWU the best it can be at Central. And then just touching on engagement opportunities and how students have such a large voice in governance with ASCWU. Largely our positions serve as the liaison between the student body and our administration and cabinet through various means. And then I also wanted to take a quick second. I know we have a few of our own student staff members here today. So I'm going to go over a few of the position titles that we have available for students to apply and really participate in. This year we have Leilani Salu, who's our communications director. We have several administrative assistants. I believe Alejandra and Andrea is here, and they're two of our current administrative assistants. We also have a new position, which is titled the Civic Engagement Coordinator. Landis is here if you wanted to wave. And that position really has been so pivotal in getting our students civically engaged and educating our student body about how to vote, how to register to vote, and what that really looks like on a college campus, which was pivotal this year, as we all know, with the presidential elections. We also employ a legislative liaison who serves as our student lobbyist, which is also a pivotal position as they go and lobby on behalf of Central and higher education in general in the Washington State Legislature each ledge session, which is happening right now. We also have an event planner for the Office of Governmental Affairs, Wellington's, which we all know is a huge staple of our campus community. And we formerly had club connectors before we shifted clubs to be underneath student involvement. So this one, we really just wanted to touch on some of the resources and opportunities we give the entire student body, which we couldn't have done with your support as S&A. So we also give an annual ASCW Top Cat Scholarship that is not funded by S&A. It is funded by a foundation account, which is actually in partnership with US Bank Max in the CIRC. So we give out on a normal year about $25,000 worth of scholarships to student leaders on campus. So that is for sure a resource that we give to students and we want to continue to give. We also hold an annual student engagement hub. This year we had and served about over 100 students who wanted to go and exercise their right to vote, which is amazing. We also provide student leadership and development opportunities for our student staff and officers. The bottom left corner this was pre-COVID. Remember we were allowed to be that close to one another without mask. So we attended an Oregon Students of Color Coalition conference, and ASCW paid for us to attend this conference as officers and staff and really bring back what we learned from that conference back to our own campus and see what steps we can take to educate our campus about equity and social justice and diversity. We also provide voter registration training and support. Landis did a whole lot of that fun stuff earlier this year in the fall. On the top, a picture is of us at a program last year that was held called Register to Vote and Pet a Goat, which is largely successful as we were able to register a ton of our students. We also provide various involvement and engagement opportunities, whether that is with our clubs, ESC orgs and committees, and making sure that students are getting involved on campus and not just here for academics. We also, going back to what ASCW does, we largely connect our students to administration, as a lot of us have that built-in connection. I'm looking at Dean Gregg because Dean Gregg and I meet on a monthly basis, which maybe not a lot of students have that opportunity. So it's me taking that stepping into that role as that liaison and being like, hey, this student needs this resource. Dean Greg, do you know if you can help, or do you know who I can go to ask for help? And that's a huge part of every single officer and even staff member's job. We also, again, touching on lobbying because it is so amazing. We also provide advocacy efforts in the Washington State Legislature. So it doesn't just positively impact Central students, it positively impacts higher education in general. And stay tuned because we are also shifting that to be virtual this year and giving students the opportunity to lobby virtually. So for right now, we're going to go over kind of the individual budgets. I know there's 6, and I'll touch on 5, and Jacob will go in depth with ESC. But for the BOD one, a lot of it is really earmarked for wages and salaries. And most of that goes to the 6 elected student officers, which can be represented by the graph. And then we do employ additional support staff within the office of the ASCW president. This year, we have 2 support staff, which is Leilani and Andrea. So yeah. And I'm hoping this guy looks familiar. If he doesn't, that's concerning because he does serve as our vote on S&A committee and our finance and committee guy, Brandon. So Brandon and I share the stewardship of the BOD budget. Again, largely goes to wages and salaries for student staff. We do have some built-in funds for a few programs and events if our office chooses to do that. This year, we did a virtual Meet the Presidents and the Provost event, which is what that budget supported, as an example. And then Edgar. So Edgar Espino is currently not with us tonight. He is actually prepping to lobby on behalf of us, which is extremely important. So no worries there. Landis is here just in case, but his budget also largely supports his staff. His staff is one of the larger staff teams within ASCW because we all know that civic engagement is so important. And so we employ 3 student staff within that office. And then his goods and services also go to a lot of the events and programs that a lot of you I feel like are familiar with, like Register to Vote and Pedagogue, the Student Engagement Hub. And we had over 8 virtual programs this year on how to have a healthy discussion with somebody with an opposing political belief and different stuff along those lines. Edgar also serves as a link for the Washington Student Association, which is essentially where I guess like where all the student governments meet. And that is such a great opportunity because I am also able to connect with the other student body presidents at Western, Eastern, WSU Pullman, UW, and the other officers can connect with their counterparts at the other institutions as well. And the WSA also helps us lobby. So Maddie, I'm actually going to go ahead and allow Maddie just to introduce herself really quickly, and then I'll touch on her budget.
Hi, everybody. My name is Madeline Koval. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the current Senate Speaker.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maddie. So as you all know, we went through a new revamp of what was called Student Academic Senate, and we now call it ASCW Student Senate. It allows our senators to have a little bit more of a larger voice outside of academics because we all know that student life in general impacts all students and not just the academic portion of their lives. So Maddie's budget now largely supports the student senators. We were able to pay student senators a stipend, kind of similar to how resident assistants are also paid via stipend. And then her goods and services also go to a few programs. Last year, I believe Nicholas, who was in a similar position as Maddie last year, did a few programs and also provided food for a few meetings as well. All right, so Ashley Sue, Ashley Sue, are you here? I can't see.
I'm still here.
Awesome. If you wanted to go ahead and introduce yourself really quickly.
Yeah, my name is Ashley Sue Vizquera. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the current director for Student Life and Facilities, and I am based out of Pierce County.
Awesome. So Ashley Sue's budget for student life and facilities also goes largely to student staff, but a lot of it also is our main source for funding for various programs and events, especially some of our larger programs and events, like Wellington's Wildfire. We also did Fred Meyer Night last year, which was a huge hit. We had about 1,700 students attend that program last year. And she also employs the second largest staff team. I believe there's 3 staff members on your staff team this year, and last year there was 4. So Wellington's a huge mark in our community, in our campus pride. So we really want to make sure that that position is filled, and we spread Wildcat cheer everywhere we go. This budget also supports and collaborates with campus activities a lot. This year, I really want to touch on this, and I believe I'll touch on it later on, but Ashley Sue is also supporting the West Side, which by purchasing a new Wellington suit, which has never been done before, because Ashley Sue is our first student leader to serve on ASCWU from a university center in general, so from Westside, Pierce County, and she has brought such a great perspective that we would not have, that we wouldn't have had without her here. So just touching on some of our engagement opportunities that we provide students. Again, we have clubs, organizations, and committees. And I just wanted to throw in pictures because I'm more of a visual person. Don't give me a textbook. And touching on clubs, I'll briefly go over clubs. As a lot of you know, we did shift clubs to be underneath the Office of Student Engagement. So Michael Middleton, who serves as the coordinator for student engagement, supports clubs. We just largely advocate and encourage students to join our clubs, and Brandon, as a VP, also is our link between Interclub Association and the Board of Directors. And their budget largely funds student clubs and for clubs that request funds for whatever program, event, or initiative they would like to do, or travel when that was a thing, throwback to when that was a thing. And that I just showed a one sheet for clubs and their impact on our campus. I'm hoping I can play this video. I'm gonna be sad if I can't. So this is a slide just talking about our response to COVID-19. Internally, when it first hit in spring, sorry. That's weird. I don't think it's allowing me to play the video, and I believe I stopped sharing my screen. But so internally, when COVID first hit, we did shift all of our officers and student staff to work from home. I'm happy to say that we did not lay off any student staff, and we were able to retain our student staff and have them do various CLA trainings, do some succession planning for the next group of officers, things like that. And we also externally provided we were kind of like the mouthpiece, I want to say, for COVID-19 and what the university plans to do. A lot of us served as Wildcat influencers, which just advocated for our general student body to wear masks, be physically distant from one another, and practice safe guidelines while in a pandemic. We also shifted a few of our staple programs and events like the Tradition Keeper Trek to be virtual. And also, gosh, I'm sorry, Dr. Hyde, this video won't play. So this video was of Jasmine Washington's very impactful speech to our student body last year, just saying, hey, we are #CWU together, even though we are seeing each other virtually nowadays. Maybe it'll play, it's not letting me. Okay. So our plan, if we were to reduce our budget by 15%. So again, I'm just going to reiterate that we largely support student staff. So our priority would actually be maintaining our current staffing level so that, as we all know, as college students, we don't want to add that financial burden onto students by having them lose their job. So our priority would be maintaining our student staff and making sure that students have that paycheck to pay for rent, groceries, personal care items, etc. I think our plan would be to really look closely at our efficiency as an organization, look at our goods and services, and maybe look at it as an opportunity to collaborate with additional departments or organizations within the university or even in the community. So maybe instead of the Equity and Service Council just 100% largely supporting a program or event, maybe we can look at collaboration with the Diversity and Equity Center or another opportunity like that. Like maybe the board of directors can collaborate for an event with Ellensburg Rotaract, different stuff like that. But we would largely make sure our priority is supporting our current student staff. So collaboration and efficiencies. I threw a bunch of pictures in there because we have such great partners, and not just partners within the institution, but partners within the Washington State as a whole. ASCW on this picture right here is a picture of ASCW with Campus PD. We work closely with Campus PD, a picture with myself in administration and Wellington. We partnered with Fred Meyer last year to really build that town and gown community with Ellensburg and Central. And this is the Secretary of State when we were lobbying. So we really just have partners, not just at Central, not just in Ellensburg, but all over. And again, we also work closely with our partner institutions and their various student leadership. All right. So before I turn it over to Jacob, I wanted to first of all, thank you all for this opportunity. I know that this can be tiresome. So thank you all so much for having me and giving me this opportunity and for your consideration. So if you have any questions, I can go ahead and potentially answer them with Dr. Hyatt's help. I also can't see the chat. Oh, maybe I can.
Bjorn, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm seeing a little bit of like not quite rounding errors in some of the budgets, but some of the budgets are under, the expenses are under what was allocated and some are over. I was wondering if there was any way to even that out between ASCW organizations.
Yeah, do you know which specific budget that one was looking at?
Board of Directors is under budget. You have like 40,000 extra. Senate, unsurprisingly, is operating at a deficit, as is ESC and Student Life. And I think Ledge Affairs has a small deficit.
Yeah, fine.
I may be reading the charts wrong. Just bear in mind.
No, I'm trying to find it.
I can kind of pop in. There are a few, while you're pulling that up, Mikhail, there are a few that are showing that. And I do believe that there's a few that are showing a positive. And so to kind of answer your question, it would be really up to the committee if they would allow something like that to kind of even those out. I do know those expenses are definitely estimated on things. And keep in mind, the people that submitted this submitted about, gosh, it was, about six or 7 weeks ago. And so they were kind of just estimating on what that would look like. So when the committee's looking at it, great question on what those expenses are, but whoever is in charge of those budgets will be tasked to balance those out once some of this information and ideas of what will happen once the fiscal year starts.
Thank you, Lacey.
I think Messina has a question, Christian.
Oh, yep, there's her hand. And then did you have a question too, Joey, or no?
I'll go after her. Yep.
Okay, good.
So Mikhail, I was just wondering, how much do you guys pay your officers and how much do you pay your student workers?
Yeah, so the pay varies for student staff per, I want to say officer that the staff member works under, but officers work at $16.50 an hour for 19 hours a week as of Monday, I believe. No, I don't know if that's fully implemented yet, but historically we've operated at $15 an hour for 19 hours a week. And then student staff range from $13.15 an hour to 15, I think. Any additional officers can jump in with how much y'all are paying your student staff.
I can jump in. Oh, sorry, Jacob. Sorry. I know I pay my senators $15 an hour for 5 hours a week. They do a lot for the community as well. And then because I only have one support staff, so my administrative liaison, I pay them $15 an hour as well because I'm more demanding.
My staff also gets, I only have one staff under me and they also get 15 an hour because we work under the Equity and Service Council. So we want to be as equitable as possible with our pay in our office.
Yeah, Andrea and Leilani, who work with Brandon and I, also get paid 15 an hour.
All right, and I think Joey had a question as well.
Yeah, Mikkel, and I apologize if you mentioned this in the presentation and I missed it, but can you touch on specifically a little bit about the goods and services under the board of directors? I know some of the others are based on programs and travel, but that one I think has some other pieces that I think would be important for the committee to know with insurance and stuff.
Yeah, so last year, goods and services looked a lot different than what it does this year. So last year, goods and services looked like Jasmine had giveaways. Like we also did coffee cards to encourage students to go to an open forum for the provost/VP for academic affairs position in that open forum. And then we also did various giveaways with public affairs. We partnered with them and to do giveaways for like swag items, like pop sockets. There was pens, towels, I think, different things like that. I think we did have, I'm almost 100% certain Jasmine did have a program. I think it was called Spill the Tea with President Jasmine, where she also paid for catering, and I think she gave away mugs to students that were there.
Eunice, you have your hand up?
Yes, I have a quick question. I mean, this question is to Mikhail, Joseph. I mean, whoever answered this question is about the clubs. I see that $100,000 we give money to clubs under the clubs, right? And also, these clubs are coming to supplemental funding to S&A, except this year. So that $100, what it's pay?
Yeah. So Club Senate budget was, that pool of money was for clubs to go ahead and request funds for either a program or event, but I believe the maximum that they can request was $2,000. Correct me, anybody can jump in. But so a lot of the times clubs and orgs went to supplemental if they were seeking more than $2,000. That would be the maximum that was allotted to them via Funds Council, or what back then just ESC and SAS and Club Senate.
So my question is, why does Club Senate is still under you guys? Because you guys don't have a position such like that anymore, and it should be under the Center of Leadership Engagement, right?
I think that's a good question. Lots of changes have happened within the past few years with clubs. I think it's because within the last quadrennium, that's where clubs kind of like lived, was ASCWU, but now I think for the next quadrennium, I believe internally y'all can shift that, I think.
Thank you.
I think Lacey could like say too, I think there's just like complications with like even just changing names, let alone like transitioning budgets.
It can get pretty complicated, even though it seems like a simple idea. It takes a lot of people to make that actually happen.
I believe Terry had a question.
Thank you. As long as we have enough time. I haven't been keep chair. Okay, thank you, Joey. So my question is, in one of the places you talked about the metrics that you're using. I know my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that presence just got started being used this year.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? So then I assume in past years you've been, you talk about in the documentation about doing surveys and focus groups. Can you tell me what surveys you regularly administer to the student population, or focus groups that you regularly do?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to touch on. I've only served with an ASW for the past 2 years, but I know before presence, we utilized, honestly, a lot of officers just kind of hand wrote like how many students attended their program or event, or we did use Qualtrics X amount of years ago. With like the turnover rate for officers, it is kind of hard to maintain some of those records, as sometimes it does leave with the graduating officer that is matriculating out. But we have held focus groups for should CWU be a tobacco-free campus. We've implemented surveys, or at least partnered with the Wellness Center and various entities on campus to roll out a survey. I know that largely the Student Life and Facilities position 2 years ago worked closely with the Student Union and Rec team when they were looking at their CERC expansion as an option for a survey to get those metrics. I'm blanking on some other great examples. Somebody that has been here longer than me.
Yeah, I think what I'll add, this is Jenna, I think what I would add is, we also look to simple things like what is our engagement with students showing up to vote in our primaries and our final elections. It tells us in terms of how we're activating students' awareness to vote and engage in that type of opportunity. So that's just one other example. Because of the board turning over every single year, it's hard to have a systemic ongoing process of metrics to compare from year to year. That's why show voting is one of the ones that we can be, although, last spring we had to pivot and do online voting. We will do that again this year, so we will have somewhat of a comparison. But, we wanted to highlight that. I just lost my train of thought on something else, but the stewardship of the resources that each board does use, and I think how they've governed the last 4 years to move to how clubs and organizations, which is one of the higher engagement opportunities for students to find their place here at the university, is a big one. Hence formulating how presence can be an incredible platform for students to do that seamlessly. And if you've never had an opportunity to see presence, it's really phenomenal and quite sophisticated and really impressive to look at. And I think it really meets students in a really progressive way. But anyway, that tool really has provided us a way to know how folks are showing up and how they can communicate back to students and get feedback as student leaders.
Thank you, Dr. Hyatt.
So if I could just ask a follow-up question. You mentioned the voting. I thought that was interesting because, again, I just saw this in the Observer, I think, in just this past year. So about like 600 students actually voted last year. And so is that typical for how many students vote every year or not? I really don't know.
Yeah, no, so definitely last year was kind of like our anomaly, right? We shifted everything to be virtual and we had our first virtual elections. We had about 600 students participate and engage with ASW elections last year, whereas in a normal year when we're in person and candidates are allowed to campaign outside and really be on campus and engaging our constituents, we typically have about 2,000 students get, or more, I believe, right? 2,000, I think, was the number. So last year was definitely an anomaly, but we do know that virtual elections can bring a positive side, as we have Ashley Sue with us from Pierce County and serving in such a pivotal leadership position that wouldn't have happened if things weren't virtual.
And if I could just ask one last question, I was actually going to bring up Ashley Sue. I think that's great. You have somebody from the West Side. Of your students that you're employing, since that's about 50% of your budget, if I completely understand this, how many of your students are online students or from a center?
Yeah. So this year, I believe It's hard to tell with the whole online thing, not gonna lie. We do only have one student staff or one officer that is from a center campus. Usually our student staff that we employ are housed in main campus on Ellensburg, not housed, I guess, coded for main campus in Ellensburg. And online, it's hard to tell whether the students are fully online or not, yeah, on campus.
I think one initiative that we took this year is opening applications for everyone. And I think that shows like the success that we can have in the future of opening applications for people from all campuses. So.
I think Eunice had a question.
Yes. First, I would like to start as a student I see the student government does very good job, even though in the COVID-19. As a student, I am proud of you guys. But my question, and I know that you guys all do a good job from different places, different locations. So thank you for whatever you guys doing it. So my question is, each office doing, I am not talking about the budget for the with more than $100,000, the one board directors. I'm talking about each office. I know that you guys all most responsible are same thing for students, right? So why you guys have all different budgets? I feel like as a student, I would like to see same budget for all office.
Yeah.
Because so what's the why the difference? Like some offices less, some office more. Why there's no balance?
Yeah, that's definitely a good and valid question, Eunice. And I think that we have separate budgets because it allows each specialty officer to kind of have that autonomy with what they want to use that budget for. And also it's earmarked for specific things. So like something that's super important is separating, instead of just ASCW as a whole pot of money, we separate out the Equity and Services Council so that we're not taking away funds that could be allocated to marginalized communities that want to educate our student body about their culture or identity. And also a good point is student life and facilities. Honestly, again, our staff really largely, or our budgets largely support student staff. So we really wanted to set aside that fund to go specifically for student life programming for activities as well. And of course, we have different constituents that also request funds, like the ESC orgs request from the ESC budget. The last quadrennium, academic departments, students within academic departments requested from Student Academic Senate. We know that that has changed a little bit this year, and clubs request from Club Senate budget, so that it's earmarked for their specific groups. So it doesn't become kind of like a competition.
Thank you.
And Lacey, just recognizing what Lacey added in the chat, Eunice, she said that ACW different budgets are intentional so we can show financial trends by program and specific type. Thank you, Lacey.
Bjorn, did you have a question too?
Yeah, if there's time.
There's time.
Okay. So I'm assuming you guys have planned for the sudden increase in staff as a result of the new Senate overhaul. So I'm not going to worry about that. But the club overhaul regarding what they can come to S&A with, has that changed the amount of money needed for the Interclub Association or anything? Since there's just no change in the request, I was interested.
That's a very good question that I'm going to probably defer to Lacey and Dr. Hyatt. I think this is actually still a conversation that's happening, especially as student engagement is also now shifting to be underneath the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement.
Lacey, you probably, and as a transition also with Jeff, do you have any insight into that to answer that more directly?
So I probably can, but it cut out after the academic senator. So I'm not sure exactly, Bjorn, what question were you asking?
Oh, sorry. Regarding the changes to the Club Senate, now the Interclub Association, especially regarding S&A's new guidelines on how to, or whether we can offer funds to club organizations, why the budget hasn't changed basically, or what's still up in the air about that.
Great. I'll do my best here. I think really what the biggest change or the lack of change of this funding, I would say, is due to the type of funding. So really what the things we've talked about with ASCW clubs and funds requests were really going towards supplemental funding, which is kind of that different conversation. So I would assume that we would actually see ASCW in the form of a supplemental type of request for an increase like that, as opposed to a base funding. So I think the important piece to talk about across the board, not necessarily specific to this, is we're really looking at operational needs for base funding each year. And I think some of that stuff will come out of more of what we would deem one-time funding.
Any more questions?
Can I, if I could ask just one more question off of what Lacey just said, just to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So if most of the club Senate money is being dispersed through the clubs, then if that money is not, if the club Senate is no longer going to do that, then why would we still disperse that much money through that? I'm a little confused about that.
Mikhail, do you want to answer that? Because I believe that the intent is to still do that. The only reason we're not necessarily doing that in this manner right now is due to the COVID restrictions. And so the intent would be to go ahead and basically start that process up once the restrictions are lifted.
And Terry, to answer your question, it lives underneath a different name now. I know names and acronyms are super difficult because they always change. So instead of Club Senate, clubs can now request funds from the Funds Council, and they get that information at their interclub association meetings. I know that's super confusing, but I believe the clubs are very knowledgeable about that new process. And Michael Middleton, who's a student engagement coordinator, has worked super hard to fully roll out Funds Council and Interclub Association.
So does that mean that we should shift that money over there? Or what if that money is flowing through that path, then why does the Club Senate still need the same amount of money? That's the part I'm confused about.
I think that's a conversation for students as well, because we don't know what students want, and we don't want to remove student autonomy from where their funds are going. So we don't have an ICA president, I believe. So I think there's complications when moving student groups under another department, because we don't want them to feel as though they're losing autonomy to their funding and their groups. I'm sorry if you were going to say something, Mikhail, but
I wasn't.
But I think that's also like a discussion for students in clubs and the student body. I wish we can like simply like know like what students want, but I think it's a really complicated discussion.
Yeah. Lacey, were you gonna add something?
Well, I think I just wanted to maybe ask a question, but just to confirm. So with the proposed base funding departments that you have, the intent behind the Club Senate money, or however we want to call that, would still be to help support clubs in programs and activities, whether that's travel or hosting events or whatever that might be, once the students have decided those types of intent.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I think. Like, to answer your question, Terry, the funds are still available for students in a normal year, non-COVID times. It just is really just coined a different term, but that resource is still available to students.
I just wanted to add a little piece, is that even though COVID has restrictions, they're still requesting funds, and there are certain clubs that are receiving them. It is nowhere near what we had seen in the past by any means, but it's still an opportunity for students if they can find a kind of a way around those restrictions. And so sometimes that's an online conference registration or something that would adhere to their club.
Any more questions? Seeing none, I'd like to say thank you, Mikhail, for your first presentation. And I believe Jacob is up next for the second one.
I believe so. Mikhail, did you have anything closing, or am I good to go?
No, you're all set. Just wanted to thank the S&A committee.
Okie dokie. Hello, everyone. Let me start sharing my screen. Okay, does that look fine? Okie dokie. Hi, everyone. Jacob Robles, pronouncing him as Director of Equity and Equity and Multicultural Affairs. I'm sorry, I wrote Community Affairs earlier. I don't know why I keep saying the old version of my title. Okay, so just want to say, although this presentation is presented by me, I have wonderful people here supporting me and wonderful people here who have supported me to get to this presentation. And that is Abby Chen, if Abby wants to give a wave, Director of the DEC, our advisor for ESC. We have Justin Santoli, Program Manager in the DEC, future advisor for ESC. We have Stephanie Mora, who works under ESC as the executive assistant. These are all people who are very patient with me and help me and hold my hand along any process I go through. So although it says presented by Jacob Robles, there's a team always in the ESC, and we always work as a team and make sure that we help each other. So gotta give credit where credit is due. So I'll move on. Oh my gosh, pressed the wrong button. Okay, so the mission statement for ESC is really important because it really embodies what we stand for, who we are, and it's just a very strong and powerful message. So I'll go ahead and read it. It says, we, the Equity and Service Council, represent the interests, needs, and welfare of student diversity at Central Washington University. Supplement and complement formal education on the Central Washington University campus, maintain appreciation and understanding of diverse social and cultural heritage, promote and coordinate the celebration of diversity, educate the associated students on issues affecting student equity, and establish, promote, and execute community service programs beneficial to the entire associated student body of Central Washington University and the community at large. So that is our mission statement. It is wonderful. It tells you exactly what you need to know about what we do, who we are. Go ahead and go to the next slide. These are, when we say ESC, Equity Service Council, so we are a council comprised of representatives that represent organizations on campus. Organizations are different than clubs on campus. They fall under ESC, and they receive a separate pot of funding. They also represent diverse and marginalized identities on campus. So our current members of ESC are AUAP, Asian America University Program, BSU, Black Student Union, CASA, Central African Student Association, FASA, Filipino American Student Association, LSO, Latinx Student Organization, FGSO, First Generation Student Organization, MECHA, Movimiento Estudiantil Chicanx de Aztlán, Equality Through Queers and Allies, and MSA, which will be voted on this Thursday, soon to be member of ESC. So previously recognized orgs in the quadrennium, we have ABLE, Accessibility, Belonging, Learning, and Equality, SASA, South Asian Student Association, as well as Poly Central. They are not recognized right now. There's a process in case student groups want to get re-recognized, but they were recognized for most of the quadrennium. COVID had a big part of this. So we as ESC, we come together weekly, and it's a place that promotes community across these identities, as well as a time and place for us to meet with other people, with other orgs on campus, share what's going on, how could we support each other. And we also have support for these organizations. We have support in more ways than monetary. Monetary support is a big part because it shows that, you know, university support, even though it's monetary, it shows a big support because we're not used to having that type of support in these types of communities. So we also have the support of our advisors, the executive team, which I'll talk more about later, but the support of each other is also a big thing. So it is just a big old community and a big time and place for weekly meetings where sometimes it's hard to get this type of community organically. So that is in the gist what ESC kind of does. I want to include this slide because I know sometimes you all as financial folk get to see financial side of things and see programs, but I just want to emphasize that this program base funding it's not static like some programs that happen once a year. It is a living program, and these living programs have students behind them. And there's I wanted to add some humility to what this program is besides a budget title. So this is what students usually do in a regular week to week. Each org has an executive board, which is comprised of president, vice president, secretary, and they usually meet weekly to plan a weekly meeting, and they typically meet after 5 p.m. The orgs plan and execute weekly meetings that are on average an hour and a half, and after 5 p.m. And then they also attend ESC meetings weekly. One of them does on the executive board, which are 2 hours long. And they also fulfill other duties such as committees. They also are students. So they have work, they have classes, they also event planning, financial planning, fundraising, as well as meeting with faculty and admin. We as ESC are a good place for faculty and admin to come, give us announcements, to come ask students questions, but they also know that they can reach out to specific groups on campus through these organizations. So this is all happening while these students are navigating campus as marginalized identities and students and working. And this is all of them doing free labor for the good of their own community. So they're doing this out of the love that they have for their community. And I think that's something so wonderful. And I've been involved with student orgs since freshman year. So on top of classes, work, we take time out of our day to plan and execute so much things. The executive team, we work closely with the DEC because we have that connection, Abby and Justin, and we also have Erica Collins. She is also part of our executive team. She is a graduate assistant in the DEC, but we also, in the ESC office, work to support other initiatives on campus that work to promote diversity and equity. We also have a maximum of 2 student employees that get to work with the ESC directly, but also have the opportunity for professional development as well. So those student employees are an executive assistant and a community programmer. So we get to support the organizations as well as support student staff. But ESC office does far more than the ESC council. We work, like I said, with DEC as well as other initiatives. And so our main priority is the ESC, but also other initiatives on campus as well. Oh, I am running low on time. Did not see the chat. Thank you, Abby. Oh, Got a few more slides. Just wanted to touch base on some signature ESC events. We have the ESC Block Party, which happens every fall, and it is an outdoor welcome back with food and activities that helps welcome students to campus and helps them meet all the orgs in ESC as well as clubs seeking to join the Equity and Service Council. It is a traditions keeper event. We also, another big one is cultural graduation celebrations. These graduation celebrations are put on by the orgs to recognize the accomplishment of graduation and centered around community. Important to know that the program's cultural graduations are open to all CWU students on all campuses. So we have a lot of students come from the west side, east side to come and participate. Some of these events are Black grad, Raices grad, Lavender grad, Poly grad, I meant to say FASA grad. We also work to meet other identities, graduation wants and needs, like providing the undocumented student group on campus with stoles. I believe last year we provided MSA with stoles. So, and that is with the support of DEC as well. Here's some pictures. Top left is Rasa grad, Raisa's grad. That one is probably one of our biggest graduations. This is from the block party. Hope maybe I'll play, who knows. And then we have the ESC block party, which is on the patio, so it does have a lot of people come and attend. We have Showtime. Just wanted to talk about some other ones. Showtime is an event put on by BSU every February, modeled after Showtime at the Apollo. The event is a talent competition where the audience gets to boo or cheer the acts on stage. This is also a Traditions Keeper event. Pride Week, from the theme to the agenda, is put on by the organization Equal. They plan a week full of events, including discussion, panel events, drag shows, and usually end of the week with Lavender Grad to celebrate queer graduates on campus. Should I continue going?
So we have a motion to approve 2 more minutes by Eunice. Is there a second of that motion?
I mean, 2 minutes is enough for you?
I believe so. I think there's only.
I don't think Jake can see the chat, folks. So if you can let him know what the chat says.
Christian, I didn't catch who said second, but I know Brandon typed in second, but someone said it verbally too.
I think Christian's frozen.
And do I see a second for that motion?
I think you were right, Craig. Perfect. You have 2 more minutes, Jacob.
Okay. Here are some pictures for y'all to see from Showtime. We have the BSU Executive Board, and then Pride Week as well. Other signature events, Mabuhay, which is FASA Student Welcome Back, African Night, Barrio Fiesta, Polyfest, Holly. Students also, with their allocation funding through the ESC budget, have been able to use those funds to attend conferences such as USHLE, the Students of Color Conference, the Metro National Conference, and the Northwest FASA Conference. The student impact, we have, through these orgs, we get student leadership opportunities, volunteering, community outreach, educational opportunities, professional development / networking. I know so many people who've gotten jobs because of the network that they made just in their orgs. This is student-ran, student autonomous community spaces on campus, civic engagement, and as well as academic support. These are all things that student orgs work and really prioritize in their work. I wish I can go more in depth on those, but I'll keep the time short. This is just a fun picture, but do we have any questions?
We may have lost Christian because I don't see him either. So Eunice, I know you had a question.
Maybe you already mentioned it, but I didn't catch it. You guys also funding by not AB, by DEC?
The DEC supports student initiatives. In some ways, the DEC provides a lot of support for students and financially. But Abby, do you want to touch base on that question?
Sure. So Eunice, I think most directly, the important thing is to know that the DEC and ESC budgets are two separate budgets. So the council allocates $3,500 to each organization in good standing for them to be able to spend on organization events. And sometimes as needed, the DEC supplements that because our vision is so aligned around mission, vision, values, and purpose. But they're two separate budgets, and ESC and the council can vote how they want to spend those funds to support the organizations that are part of that council.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Messina.
I might have missed if you said this earlier in your presentation, but so for your 2021 forecast, it's forecasted that the salaries are going to go up. I'm just curious what that's like, what's happening in that area.
If I heard that right, the question is on the forecast for the 2021 year, the salaries are expected to go up. We may have, I think the forecasts do show what the salary is for our student staff if we were to have two staff, but currently we only have one. So I believe we're operating under the forecast currently because I believe the forecast is operating under the assumption that we have two student staff, but we are operating under the forecast because we only have one student staff. And there was an increase in the pay as well, so that might have an impact on it. Lacey, am I correct on that?
Yep. And I think some of the forecasts that we're looking at are pretty outdated by the time that we're looking. So at the annual reports, I believe we were looking at October data. And so that was a long time ago, and a lot of things have changed with COVID. But so there could be some actuals that come through that would be different from these annual reports that we're looking at.
Any more questions? Joey, you had a question?
Yeah, and Jacob, again, I apologize if I missed this, but for the committee who don't know how ESC organizations get recognized, can you talk about that just so they know how students, because again, you talked about what we have now and that we had some that were previously recognized, but how that goes about happening as MSA is in the process of that, but others for just the benefit of the group.
Yeah, so in order to be recognized in ESC, you have to be a recognized club for a year, and you also have to be attending ESC meetings for a year. You can do both of these simultaneously, like MSA did. So they attended Club Senate, and in the midst of that, they started attending ESC. So they were working on both requirements. So after that, then the ESC gets to vote organizations to be recognized to be in ESC, and then be recognized by ESC. I think that's the process, right? Am I missing anything? My mind just went blank. Abby, if you want to.
Yeah, I would say that then that is accurate up until recognition. And then once orgs are recognized, they have additional requirements that the council has agreed upon for what community service and support to other organizations look like, which is a really critical part of what Jake spoke to in terms of why the group is so interconnected, how supportive they are for each other, because it's built into some of the expectations of what community looks like, feels like, and how folks contribute to it.
We also have steps in the Constitution for orgs that were previously recognized who want to get re-recognized. So it is not another year-long process, like not to scare them away and not to, we want to keep them as easily as possible. So yeah, there's a process for that as well.
Eunice, did you have a question?
Just quick question. I mean, I think I supposed to ask these questions during the ECC meetings, but I want the people know. Have you guys ever rejected any funding requests by organizations?
I'm not aware in my time. We used to receive funding requests from anyone with diverse, like if they had an event or like funding that they wanted to ask for funds for. We don't do that anymore because of a clause that was found. So we only see ESC recognized funding requests, and we don't recognize outside ESC funding requests anymore.
I'd say the only time when we actively, quote unquote, have to deny a request is when an organization has already met their cap for funding out of the council. And then it becomes, Eunice, the conversation of how the DEC could continue to support if orgs want to go before supplemental and y'all, because they are doing initiatives that take more funding than just that base allocation that the council allows organizations to request every year per the Constitution.
So I want to point out that the all money the ECC has is going to direct to students organizations for their benefit.
In regard to our base funding request, like the budget itself, like all.
Yes. You know what? I don't even know what I am asking. All questions complicated in my head. I am just yield my time.
Bjorn, you had a question?
Yeah, Abby, you mentioned that organizations have a funding cap. How high is that funding cap?
It's set at $3,500 per each organization. It's that's in the Constitution, and then anything above that can be discretion that has to be voted, motioned, approved by the council as a formal process.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Of course.
Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you, Jacob, for your presentation. Thank you, everyone who presented and came today, who is not in the council. It was very nice to have you. And thanks for your consideration and your efforts today.
Yeah. Christian, can I say something really quick?
Yes, you can, sir.
So I recognize that Jacob also unmuted himself. I think we just wanted to really thank you all as a committee again. I think bottom line, ASCW student government is really here and exists as students to really serve you all. And we take seriously the investment you all have for us, and we really just want to continue being responsible stewards of that money if chosen. So thank you all.
Thank you all for your time.
Thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for all your hard work. Okay, so is there any old business today? No old business. All right, so let's move on to other business, which is communications received. Or Terry, did you have something to say? I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to see. It looks like the Power BI thing that we were trying to get access to earlier. I'm being denied access. I just wanted to let everybody. I just wanted to let Lacey know.
I appreciate that.
I figured
Greg,
it out, Lacey. It worked.
It worked. Okay.
I had to actually. I went to IS and then clicked Office 365. That then opened up my, Office 365 through a browser. I can't see it in Teams, but this way, then I had to go to apps and other apps in 365 to find Power BI. And then I had to say, okay, I'll take the 60-day free trial or something like that. And then I found the document you shared, and now I can enjoy looking at it.
For those who don't want to search the way Greg just did, in the Teams chat, Lacey actually posted the link to Power BI that will take you directly to that, and then you will have to sign up for the 60 or whatever day pro piece.
But when I did follow that, but it was kind of outside of CWU, so I didn't go through with it because I was going to have to create a new user. So, but going through IS where it linked in, my login was there. I think it was different, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't complete the other one, so I don't know.
So I'm going to try and actually send everybody a personal link in their CW email and see if that helps. But in the meantime, I have PDF'd the important pieces in Teams as well. So at least then you can have access to the information. And so I apologize, it's a little clunky. And hopefully I can get some IT support and get that a little bit more user-friendly for everybody.
I think I just accessed it.
And you may have, Bjorn. Good. So some of you it will work for what Lacey just said that she's PDFing it. If you go under the S&A committee in Teams and then files, she created a Power BI PDF documents folder, which is where she's uploading those PDFs. So if you're able to use the link and access it through Power BI, that's probably best because then it's a little more fluid. But if you're not able to, Lacey is uploading the PDFs into that folder under the files.
If anyone needs to go and access it, I managed to do it through Teams. Permission to share my screen so that people can follow along because it's a little hidden button.
Go ahead.
So join me on this wonderful journey. This is how it looks in my Teams. It's been doing this since the start of the meeting. And so there's this little button up here, go to website. It's a little net symbol. And I clicked on that and it lets me in with the caveat that I need to ask Lacey for permission, which I just did. So if there's a notification, that should come up for you and hopefully that should grant me access. As you can see up in top right, I'm logged in to Power BI via my CWU account and I didn't have to do anything. So if that shows up on your screen, then we should have figured out a way to get in. I think, hopefully. If anyone needs me to go over that again, I can help later.
Thank you, Bjorn.
Sorry, I totally lost my Zoom there. So Bjorn, I tried to, my computer's being a little slow. My internet, I think, is a little slow tonight, but I'm going to go in after this meeting, make sure everybody's individually added. I had added the group, and so clearly I think that's part of the issue. So you might get an email notification from, I think it just says Microsoft Power BI or something like that, generic, but I'll make sure to go ahead and do that. So Bjorn, I appreciate that. I looked online and it said that it could be some sort of computer Teams issue of why it's not showing up on the page. So,
all right, sweet.
So I just went back to Teams and it was still blank and I didn't get anything hitting that, but I just closed that tab and then just reopened it and it's all there. So it must have been doing the Power BI on through my CWU now as part of my Teams. I don't know. Anyways, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's all great. Thank you.
All right. So with that, let's go to the second call of public comments. Any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that? Eunice, you had your hand up.
So if you guys have some free time tomorrow, while we all have a tired headache from the numbers, we will host as an international office karaoke night, usually tomorrow. Yunus is not going to sing, but I will be there. So you guys all welcome to join the karaoke night tomorrow at 6 p.m. I put the information here and I can email you later. It will be nice to have you all. So it's gonna be fun. And second thing, you guys welcome to join the ECC meeting tomorrow. MSA finally becoming organizations. So if they vote yes, so you guys welcome to join and know other people too. Yes, this is the public comment. I yield my time.
Thank you, Eunice. Anything else from anyone else? All right, seeing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting today.
I saw Brandon.
Yeah, I saw Brandon's hand. So I believe that was a motion. Do I see a second?
Greg is seconding.
Great. All right, perfect.
No one wants to leave tonight. And while you all are voting, great questions tonight. I appreciate it. Again, I know it's a lot of information, but you all are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Yeah, have a
good
nice night, guys.
Have a great week, all.